Good afternoon. Testing, check. Can y'all hear me out there? No? Okay, you know what? It's all good. Guess what? Because I'm just... Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, I like this. Oh, I love coming to these type of events because I always get feedback from the audience. Good afternoon. I'm so glad that each of you are here. Welcome to this afternoon's panel. It is how to get into law school and how to pay for it. And behind me, I have several representatives from law schools, admissions representatives from law schools all over the country to give you a better idea of what it is to get into law school and how to pay for it here in the United States. So, I'm not going to take too much time. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. And then we're going to go ahead and roll into some questions. At the end of this, we'll get a little bit of time to allow you all to answer or ask questions of the panel. So, let me start by introducing myself and my lovely co-moderator. My name is Lorenzo Banks. I am an attorney from all the way from the beautiful and bright sunny city of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. There are black people in Oklahoma City, okay? All right. It's me, my brother, and my two cousins. No, I'm saying, I'm just playing. No, so, yes, certainly, I'm from that city. I am a practicing attorney in Oklahoma City, but I am also the Assistant Director of Admissions at Oklahoma City University School of Law in Oklahoma City. To my left, I have my lovely co-moderator. This is Erica Edwards O'Neill. She'll be, and I'll let her introduce herself.
I am Erica Edwards O'Neill. I am Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Touro Law Center in Long Island, New York. I'm an attorney. I'm also the Director of Career Services. And so that's it. We're not going to talk about it.
Thank you, ma'am. So now that you kind of have an idea of who we are, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. And I'm going to ask our panelists, please go ahead and introduce yourselves, tell them what school you're from, and your role there, and any other information you want to give us about your background and how you came to do what you're doing now. And we'll start on this end.
My name is Mark Jefferson. I'm Assistant Director of Admissions at the University of Michigan Law School, where I'm also a very proud alum of the law school. I graduated in 2006. But I'm a little bit more proud of being a graduate of an HBCU, Morehouse College in 1991. My family's from Atlanta, and so this is a wonderful opportunity to come home, and I just feel really blessed to be here with all of you. It's very encouraging.
Hello, and welcome again to Georgia State University College of Law. My name is Dr. Cheryl Jester George. I am also a product of an HBCU. I received my undergraduate degree from Morris Brown College, and I received my bachelor's and my doctorate in educational leadership from Clark Atlanta University. I have over 30-something years in law admissions. I've not been to law school 3 years, but I've been in law school long enough to know a lot about what's expected. And I just want to welcome you again to Georgia State.
Hi, my name is Randy Matthews. I'm the Associate Dean for Enrollment Services at Lincoln Memorial University, Judkins School of Law in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've been doing admissions for LMU for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years. Prior to that, I've worked for a bar review company that prepared law students for the bar exam nationally. I started off as a student representative in law school, and that ended up getting me a clerkship in the law firm that has a franchise, which ended up, national company took advantage, or liked the work that we were doing, getting people to pass the bar at over 90% in Alabama. Went to work for it, and then ended up running the Midwest, the Southeast, and then I ended up doing academic success nationally. So tens of thousands of law students I've worked with in preparing them for the bar exam, and I'm fortunate to be at LMU now with its newly provisionally approved school.
Thank you. My name is Nolan James. I'm the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at the University of Akron School of Law in sunny Akron, Ohio. I say that as I smile. It's sunny for about 2 months a year there, but I am a proud alum of the University of Akron's School of Law. I'm also a practicing attorney, primarily specializing in estate planning and real estate transactions. Before returning to Akron, I was a senior associate at Ernst & Young. I did a lot of mergers and acquisitions work and transaction advisory services there. So glad to be here on the panel and looking forward to sharing some possible.
Good afternoon. Is it on?
Yeah.
My name is Corey Hawkins. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at the University of California, Hastings College of Law, which is in San Francisco, California. I've been there about 3 years, and prior to that, I was the Assistant Dean of Admissions at Morehouse College, where I also went as a college student, and I attended Emory University School of Law, so it's great to be back in Atlanta and to speak with you today.
Good afternoon. My name is Reggie McGahee. I am the Associate Dean of Student Affairs and Admissions at Howard University School of Law. It's good to see so many bright, shining faces, and we hope to have a really good conversation with you guys today. And I do mean conversation. It should really be an exchange of information because, as you can see, there's a lot of us who can talk a while. We prefer to give you information about the things you actually want to hear versus just things that we could tell you that may be completely unnecessary because you don't need those answers.
My name is Collins Bird. I'm the Assistant Dean of Enrollment Management at the University of Iowa College of Law. I have been in the law school admissions world for 25 years, admissions total for 30 years. I did undergraduate and MBA admissions a long time ago. I am probably one of the other, I think there are 2 non-lawyers on this panel, I'm the other one. And I have an MBA, and people ask me why I left the corporate world to do law school admissions work. I said, well, number one, my wife, who was a practicing attorney in Minneapolis, wouldn't move to Chicago, so I had to move back up. But the other one is paraphrasing Roy Wilkins, who is a legend in the history of the civil rights movement. He once said that speeches may have desegregated people's hearts, but it's a lawyer who desegregated the schools. And as someone who has integrated 2 schools in his life, that rang quite true with me. And so I'm here doing law school admissions work.
Excellent, thank you. So let's kind of can anybody hear me? Anybody see me? I know this brother's right here with the camera. I'm a little short. I look like a sharp Oompa Loompa, but can you all see me? Yeah, okay, so let's kind of get some general things out the way. I'd like to ask this of all the panelists. Can you kind of give us a rundown? And Mr. Jefferson, I'm not going to pick on you anymore. I'm going to pick on Mr. Bird. We're going to start out on this end this time. Can we start with Mr. Bird and go down the panel? And can you all kind of give us a general idea of how the admissions process works at your particular law school?
Okay. At our particular law school, it's very important that you ask the schools how they operate. The schools are a bit different at each place, and there's going to be a fair, I think, from 6 to 8:30 tonight that will give you the chance to talk specifically with schools that you're interested in. We take a look at the LSAT and the GPA, but the LSAT and GPA combination are work allocation tools. They aren't things that make decisions for us. We don't have any cutoffs or anything like that. We allocate the workload based on the combination of LSAT and GPA, and you're put into one of 3 groups. We'll just call them the high-end group, the middle group, and the low-end group. Now, that doesn't mean that it's no indicator of whether or not you're going to be offered admission, because each file is going to be reviewed by at least one person, namely me. I read every file that comes through, whether you have a 180 and a 4.0 or a 120 and a 1.6. Your file is going to be read by me. And about 60% of our decision is based on the LSAT GPA combination, but about 40% of our decision is based on non-academic factors, things that have nothing to do with your LSAT and GPA and everything to do with motivation, perseverance, leadership, obstacles overcome in life, the educational benefits of diversity, various things like that. I could go for a while, but I'll sort of stop right there. Moving on.
Our application process at Howard is fairly standard as well. You know, it's very important that you give us what we ask you for and pay attention to details and directions. You'll be amazed at how many students don't do those simple things. It's very important to be meticulous in your application, to spell check, to proofread, to make sure that you give a document or an application packet that reflects who you are, because we're going to assume that you're going to give us your best. So if there's a lot of typographical errors, if there's sentences that aren't well developed and well thought out, then we're going to assume that you don't know any better because you've had all the time in the world to prepare. And if this is your best product, then we're going to take you for that being your best product. I think it's important that when you're in the application process that you remember that part of your obligation to yourself is to research the schools that you're interested in, so that when you're going through the process 75% of your application should reflect who you are, but that other 25% should be your opportunity to tell us why you think that our schools are good fits for you. And you can do that in your personal statement. You can craft part of your developmental skill set from your resume. Your letters of recommendations should be from individuals who know you well enough to talk about your skill development and their ability to watch and have nurtured you through the application process, but also watch you learn and become the individual that you want to be so that you can go to law school. And timing is very important. There's not a law school up here that will advise you to apply late or to apply close to the deadline. In fact, the deadline should be the one date that you try to stay away from. And it's amazing to us every year how many students use the deadline as their marker as to when they apply. The date that you should be aiming for is the first date that we start taking applications. That's when the most financial resources are available. That's when the most space in our law schools are available. And the thing is, you can start preparing for law school well before the application deadline. And I'll stop there too.
In my school, we do look at the application holistically, and so the LSAT and the GPA, or your academic performance, is very important. But we really do, like Reggie mentioned, take into consideration all the parts of your application. The former assistant dean at my school used to say, this is kind of like your first case as a lawyer. And so you need to kind of prove to us why you're going to be a good fit for our school and we're going to be a good fit for you. And so your whole application should fit together, and that's important. Tell a story. It should be kind of telling who you are. If you say that you want to, in your personal statement, that you want to do social justice and help people, but we look at your resume and you've never volunteered or never done any kind of social activities and things like that, then that's going to kind of be a disjointed application packet. So my advice to you is to try to make sure that you're telling the whole story. Your essay or your resume should also be reflected in the letters of recommendation that your teachers write for you and say, you know, yes, she was very active in this particular type of activity, which is reflective of the type of law that she wants to do. So, you know, it helps if you kind of tell the story.
At the University of Akron, we have a pretty standard application process similar to that which you've heard. Our applications are all reviewed by at least 2 faculty members of their law professors and 1 member of our admissions team, so either myself or our assistant dean for admissions. We too apply a holistic approach to assessing every candidate. GPA is important, LSAT is important, but you know, one of the biggest things we also look at is the personal statement. It really tells a lot about, you know, who that individual is, a lot of times why they went to law school, what types of factors are driving that decision. You heard earlier today, you know, this is an event that's supposed to be informative. Some of you guys are going to, many of you guys are going to go on and decide to apply for law school. Some of you guys are going to decide that law school doesn't make sense. A lot of times we read an application and we can kind of tell that someone's going to law school, or at least interested in going to law school for some outside reason aside from this internal motivation. So that personal statement is a really good opportunity for you to give us insight into who you are. We don't require letters of recommendation, but we strongly recommend them. A good number to strive for is at least 2, because that typically is from someone who has either had you in class or someone you've worked with that can really provide objective feedback on who you are. One thing as someone who's read a lot of these letters of recommendation that I would advise each and every one of you guys to shy away from is celebrity letters of recommendation. So, you know, we know this judge, our family knows the judge, or our family knows a lawyer. If that person doesn't know you personally, it comes through in their letter of recommendation. A lot of times it comes off as fairly generic and stale. So I would advise against those. I feel like I'm talking a little bit too much. So, okay, I'll pass it on to the next one.
Thank you. At Lincoln Memorial University, we actually follow a very similar process, look at things holistically. Again, while the LSAT and undergraduate GPA are important, we're looking for leaders and people that really get involved in their community. We're a very mission-driven university, and through the law school, what we do is we try to seek out people that want to go back to smaller and rural communities to serve the underserved and underrepresented communities. And so those things are important to us. My one piece of advice, actually two pieces of advice, would be as you submit your personal statement for each school, please make sure you go back and reread it. I can't tell you how many times we received them and they say they would like to go to the University of Tennessee because, which is across the bridge from us. And we don't really compete. We're two different schools, have two different missions. We get along wonderfully. But we received all sorts of personal statements that have other law schools mentioned in it. And that doesn't really further your cause to go to our school. Also, as Noah mentioned, the letters of recommendation. I worked in the governor's office when I graduated from college. We have a form letter. You may know the particular politician. Everybody's from a fine family, and you just fill in the information. And we see the same letters come in from various congresspeople, various senators. That's not impressive to the committee. The people that can tell the members of the admissions committee and the dean how well they know you, how do they know you, they know your work product because they entrusted you with a particular position or paper and you performed it ahead of task, you received an award on it. Those things are particularly impressive to our committee and show your dedication that the person also that wrote the letter knows you.
Okay. Well, how our process works at Georgia State, we're going to start accepting applications on October 1st. And what's included in our admissions package will be the application. And I just want to let you know if you're interested in applying to Georgia State at the fair today, we'll have application fee waivers, so check us out. We'll waive your application fee. We require the law school admissions test, your undergraduate grade point average if you have graduate work that will also be taken into consideration. And it should all come in the LSAC CAS report. With your 2 letters of recommendation. So we require 2, we'll accept up to 4 letters of recommendation. And then your personal statement should be something that's added in your application that's not included in any other part of the application process. All those materials, once complete, will be reviewed by me. Any applicants with character issues will be sent to our faculty admissions committee, and they'll make the final decision. A majority rule is what will do it. We will accept 26% of our applicant pool to make a class of 180 to 200 students each fall to fill our full-time and part-time program. Our deadline ends when the class is full, which means that we will admit, deny, and put people on the wait list. And this year we continue to admit people off the wait list up until the first day of classes. So I just advise you, we too will do the holistic approach with all those other things, but I just would advise you not wait till the deadline, and we'll talk a little bit more about why later.
Wow. That pretty much covers our approach. I think one thing, a couple of things that I would say that about the University of Michigan Law School, we pride ourselves on being a very collaborative and collegial environment. And so we always obviously look at applications for their own merit, but we also look at them with a view towards how you fit in terms of our overall environment. I'll give you an example. I oftentimes talk with potential applicants like yourself, and I'll ask people, you know, if you're really hyper-competitive, like Michael Jordan type, like I win and everybody loses, right? No one ever admits that, but some people actually are. It's like most lawyers are. But if you're really like that, then Michigan might not be the best fit for you, for example. Right? We don't tend to do it that way. Like we like to attract lawyers who like to play in the sandbox and share their toys with other lawyers. And that's an approach that we've taken for a very long time. There are other law schools that do it other ways and they make extraordinary lawyers. But part of what we want you to think about is an environment in which you'll do your best work. An environment in which embraces your own learning style, right? And you've been a learner for a long time now, so you know enough to know about what types of environments work for you and which ones don't. I would say that the personal statement means a lot to us. Everybody at Michigan kind of thinks they're a comedian, so I know if you can make our dean laugh a few times, like that will go a long way towards our reviewers looking favorably. Letters of recommendation, like everyone has said, like it's better for us to get a letter of recommendation 3 pages from a teaching assistant than from a professor who gives a paragraph and says so-and-so made an A. Right? That doesn't really tell us anything, but a graduate assistant actually could tell us a lot about you. I feel like I'm going on and on, so I will leave it there and wait for the next question.
Can everybody hear me? Are we good? Okay, it's on now. Thank you. You know, I keep hearing you all say you all look at individuals holistically, that it's not just the raw numbers. And I've also heard at least one of you say, specifically talking to the resume, and when you submit that with your law school application, but the truth of the matter is that when we submit our law school applications, we could submit anything about our background. You know, I used to be the mascot for Chick-fil-A or whatever it is. Can you tell us, you know, when it comes to those other things, that when you're looking at individuals holistically, not necessarily the raw numbers, what are the things that kind of stand out to you when it comes to the resume and people's background other than their grades? And this is a question for anybody on the panel. All of you or some of you can answer that.
So from a holistic standpoint, you know, you have a lot of applicants that apply to law school. So you want to see something, whether it's through, you know, the personal statement. We also have an optional why Akron question that people can answer, or through a visit. You know, we encourage everyone who is looking at our law school to come visit us. A visit, something that came up in conversation that makes this applicant stand apart. I had the opportunity to talk with a young man, you know, and he's thinking about going to law school, and he mentions that he was running off to an appointment to go teach a blind child how to swim. You know, so I sure hope that this person applies to my law school, you know, because that's a memorable type of thing. So things like that, you know, things that stick out. Now we're all not teaching blind kids how to swim, but there are certain things in your own unique situations that will make you stand apart. So if it doesn't come up in the personal statement, make sure it comes up in a conversation that you have with a law school admissions professional, because it will make you memorable, it will make you stand apart. Quick poll. How many upperclassmen, juniors and seniors in the room? Okay, primarily any underclassmen, sophomore, freshman? Okay, a couple, good. So I like to say there's a couple things that, you know, there's controllable and non-controllable things. So at this point, for a lot of upperclassmen, you know, your GPA is pretty much what it's going to be. You know, there's not a ton you can do to change that, so that's uncontrollable. One thing that is somewhat controllable, but also not controllable is the LSAT, the preparation that you put into doing that. You know, the LSAT, for us at least, is pretty important. So someone who's maybe struggled academically, who performed fairly well on the LSAT, you know, that really gives them, you know, more reason for us to take a second look. So a couple things: stand out, think about the controllable, the non-controllable. You can control what you put in that personal statement. You can control the conversations that you have with admissions professionals. So that's what I'll leave you with.
I had a couple of comments. What makes you stand out? On most law school applications, there are questions that will help you stand out. They're going to ask you about extracurricular activities. They're going to ask you about work experience, a variety of things. And that's where you'll have an opportunity to add those things that will help us to understand where you are and what your passions are. Individuals who are involved in things on campus will have an idea as to your leadership abilities. So make sure you take those questions on the application seriously and add the detail. How many of you have applied for the Dr. Cheryl Jester George Scholarship? I'm only joking, there isn't a scholarship. But if there was a scholarship by their name, and all of you applied, and there are maybe, I'll say 150 people in this room, and only one person was selected, and then you're going to talk about that scholarship and why you were selected out of the 150 people. You've got to just give the detail as to what makes you stand out, even in that situation, as you're preparing your application. Again, you can add addendums beyond the personal statement that could possibly add a diversity statement, or add something, a statement that you just want to share with us about an experience that you had. And so there are some things that you can do beyond the numbers. You can do one thing that we do, and I have to tell you that a lot of the people that got admitted in the last part of the applicant pool, they met with me. you know, I'm not saying all law schools will do that, but I think a lot of us, we meet with applicants, and if we find something that there's a spark or an interest or something underlying that we didn't find any other place in the application, I'm gonna look out for you, and I think my colleagues will too. Because our mission is to make sure that we help you succeed, but the underlying mission is that we admit people that will successfully complete our individual law schools.
Can I ask one question just to follow up? You said something was, you have an optional question, right? In that, is there anything that's ever really optional on the application, right?
Well, you'd be surprised how many people don't answer that optional question. Yeah, but that's a great question. When you're completing your application, anything that's optional, I mean,
It's not.
It's not. I mean, they should change it to opportunity question, because it's like extra credit or bonus or whatever. But yeah, there is no option. So if you see optional, take some time, take the effort to do that. And I'm surprised how many people do not take the time to answer our optional. And just to talk, so we have, it's why Akron, so it requires an extra step. You've got to do a little research on the university and tie it into an essay. So it's an additional opportunity for us to look at your writing, and then also you can kind of do a little homework on us and tell us why we make sense for you.
Give me 4 quick points. Whatever you do, whether it's being involved in sports, community service, church work, school work, whatever it is you do, make sure it is, number 1, legal and ethical. If it isn't legal or ethical, we're going to find out about it, and then you have a whole other set of problems to deal with. And tell us what you learned from the experience. Don't just write or create a poetic list of accomplishments, achievements, and wonderful things. Tell us what you learned from those experiences and how those things are going to help you be a better lawyer, better student, better citizen. That's very important. And you can do that in a personal statement or in the optional pieces. What stands out in the wrong way? Poor writing. Writing is the most important skill you can bring to law school. You can't just be a good writer. You have to be freaky good writer. And everyone's going to graduate from undergrad thinking they know how to write, and you probably do. There's knowing how to write, and then there's knowing how to write like a lawyer. And so you have to really emphasize the importance of writing and making sure that you've done everything you can to refine your writing skills. It will be refined even more once you get to law school, but writing is the most important skill. Distasteful humor. Be very careful about using humor in the process. I have a great sense of humor. I do weird Rodney Dangerfield jokes. You can ask my colleagues who've known me for a while. I get a little goofy sometimes. But in the admissions process, be very careful, because most of the members of the admissions committee are faculty members. And faculty members sometimes don't understand humor, so be very careful about using humor in your process. In fact, frankly, I know that there may be some processes where you can put in a nice joke and it'll make the folks on the committee laugh. But I would think about avoiding humor. And then once you get to the law school of your choice, you can break out the Rodney Dangerfield, the Jerry Seinfeld. See how old I am? I bet a lot of you in this room don't even know who Rodney Dangerfield is. So, you know who he is? All right, I won't break out in my thing. But so be very careful. Oh, final thing. Take ownership for your strengths and take ownership for your weaknesses. Ownership. Be held accountable. Stand up and be accounted for what you did right and what you did wrong. I have a major problem with folks who say, well, it's someone else's fault, it's the world's fault, society's fault, this fault, that fault, the other fault. That may be true, but there may be some times that you did something, you just kind of messed up. We've all messed up. But like I said before, what did you learn from it? And how did you grow from that and make yourself a better person? Recreate yourself and make yourself better. Sorry if I went on a little bit.
There's one thing that I want to add. How many people understand what the application process is for? I mean, truly, raise your hand if you understand what the process is for. Because I think before you can really, not many, clearly, and that's okay. Before you can understand how to do it right, you have to know and have an expectation of what we're looking for. When many people ask for an interview, your application is your interview. It tells us something different and it gives us different aspects of who you are as an individual. Your degree and how well you've done in your classes over 4 or 5 years will tell us the type of consistent student and scholar you are. Your testing score, and I know how people feel about the LSAT, will still tell us, give us an insight into your testing ability and your preparation, your writing skills, your analytical skills, your logical reasoning skills. Your resume tells us what types of jobs you've had, and whether it be a job at McDonald's or a job in a law firm, there's skills that you've nurtured in those jobs, and if you know what lawyers do, you should be able to identify skills at McDonald's that are going to be relevant to the legal profession. So every job you've had can be relevant to you using that in your in your resume to show why you're prepared for law school. Your personal statement is your opportunity to tell us something about you that is apparent nowhere else. There's no point in rehashing your resume in your personal statement. If you do that, then you've wasted an opportunity to tell us something different. But for one caveat, if you don't know what to write in your personal statement, I always recommend that people write from this perspective. Everything in your life is important, but it's not all relevant to the question. And the question inherent to every application to law school is, why do you want to be a lawyer? And if you understand that, and that's given the controlling fact that some law schools ask you what to write about, or they inform you what you should write about, always follow the directions. But when you're given the free opportunity, then we want you to tell us why this process, why this career, why have you taken the steps that you've taken to put together a skill set to then allow you to go out into society to do something that others can't do. So every aspect of your application tells us something different, and that is your interview. So you shouldn't have to call and say, can I come in and talk to you about why I would be a great candidate for your law school, because you should have demonstrated that in your application. If there is a need to put an addendum in an application, I always make sure that students understand, like Dean Bird has said, unless it is something that you've taken accountability for, then you're just making excuses. So my GPA was bad this third semester of law of undergrad. I had some personal obligations, and therefore I couldn't really focus the way that I needed to in the classroom. That's a great answer, but it's not enough. What you then need to do is close a circle and say, what have you done since to make sure that if you're put in a similar situation, why that same type of outcome won't happen again? What have you learned from that situation to make sure that you either put yourself in a better position or you've matured through it so that you know how to handle a stressful situation so that you don't have a negative outcome? That's how you take something that may have been a bad experience and then shown growth and maturity and ownership, and then we can take that answer and we can do a lot more with it.
You know, as a lawyer, I think any lawyer, if they're honest, they would be able to say that there's been many times that you walked into a hearing or a trial and you really didn't know what to do. Certainly is this lawyer's personal story. Sometimes I didn't know what to do, but I was ultimately able to survive because even though I didn't know what to do, I knew for sure what not to do. Can you tell us, are there some, because you all are telling us just write, what are you going to do? What's good for you to explain things, to show your writing off, and that's great, but give us some general pitfalls of things that you see that really makes you grit your teeth. What are the things that are absolutely do nots with your application packets?
I'll respond and say the same thing that Dean Bird said, and bad writing really does stand out. I personally have a particular issue with semicolons. If you don't know how to use a semicolon, then don't use it. Get people to actually read who you trust and who have good grammar, good English skills, whatnot, to read your essay or read anything that you've written to make sure that you are doing it to the best that you can. Don't get into writing, of course, but it's okay to get people to review it. You want people to review your stuff who know you well and also people who don't know you well, so they can give you feedback as to what they've gained from reading your information. Also to talk about some of the optional statements that you could write about. As Reggie was saying earlier, you can take advantage of the optional personal statements, but if you're not telling us anything new, then I would avoid doing that. Because keep in mind, we're reading a lot of essays, we're human beings, we get tired of reading stuff too. And so give us some new information. If, for instance, you're telling us, I took the LSAT, and only took it once, and I'm not a good test taker, we understand some people don't test well, but at the same time, we all use the LSAT for a reason. because we're having to use that to gauge who we're going to allow into our schools. And so by telling us that the LSAT doesn't really matter, you're going to do well anyway, it's almost saying you're kind of like demeaning our process, or that you're not, you know, the LSAT's not important, so we shouldn't take it into consideration. We use it for a reason. And so give us some new information if you're going to take the time to do an optional personal statement. If you're going to do a diversity statement and just talk about your ethnicity, I mean, that's fine, okay, but go deeper into that. Why are you going to be a different candidate from other people if you're going to talk about the diversity statement? And so, just to kind of respond to your question, give us new information or don't say anything.
Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Well, I guess kind of just to echo a few of the points and add, you know, so I'm going to say instead of do not, but do. Own everything, right? You know, we've heard every excuse, and they tend to recycle. You know, with an LSAT school or something like that. The room was so hot, or something. You know, everything you lie with, and they tend to recycle. So own everything, right? You know, I did. I took it once. So okay, you did what you did. You know, you had a bad grade. You know, well, it wasn't because that teacher didn't teach you anything. You know, you messed up, and that's okay. You know, we look at everything. So you know, don't push the ball off to other folks. The other thing too, over disclose on the character and fitness. We've seen. So don't try to hide. If there's character and fitness issues, don't try to hide those. Just, you know, get it out early. We offer a second opportunity for folks to get some character and fitness issues out in the open after they've been admitted. But you know, if things happen in your past, own it, disclose it. It's only going to make life better for you in the end. Lastly, on the personal statement, it's important to write well, but don't try to sound like a lawyer. You know, don't try to use these million-dollar words if it's not natural for you. So just write well, do your best, but don't try to sound like a lawyer. You'll have 3, maybe 4 years of law school to really refine those skills, and you'll be writing like a lawyer before you know it. So, thank you.
The one don't, I guess, a piece of advice is don't mistreat the staff if you happen to call the office. We're here to help, we really are. We want to get all the material to the committee to make the decisions quickly. In our school, we generally turn things around between a week and 10 days. But we often have students call who are very anxious and want an answer because they're going to compare schools. And we understand that, but we really want to try to make sure that you get all the pieces in so that the committee could review your file favorably. So when you call, just be nice, and I promise you it'll pay off. And ultimately, I promise you our staff will certainly reciprocate and treat you just as well as you treat us, so we can help you.
I would add, if I may, to be honest with yourself in this process. One thing that we constantly repeat the refrain of writing well is because you can always improve that. I encourage students to write every day. The more comfortable you are with the foundational skills of writing, then everything becomes easier when you have to write. You'll have more confidence, you'll be more comfortable with it, and it's easier to control the mechanical skills. So if you look at your writing and you know that it's difficult for you, or when you give others the opportunity to critique your writing and they give it back to you and there's a lot of red ink or there's a lot of suggestions that they made, then you may need to take a step back and ask yourself, can I improve my skill set prior to going to law school? Law school isn't the place to learn how to write and how to write like a lawyer. We assume that when you get there, you have a strong skill set, and to be honest with you, to put yourself in the best position to be successful, you need to make sure that you have a certain level of proficiency before you get there, because we don't always have the time to do the type of rehab that may be needed in some cases, because instead of students being honest with themselves, they make an excuse for why they have a 2.6 GPA and they had C's in English. That may tell you something, and there's nothing wrong with you. Well, I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong if you have C's in English. It's English. It's all of our first language. You should be able to master English. But we look for strong grades because out of a class of 50 people, you were exposed to information from the same professor. That professor gave an exam, and at the end of that exam, you were asked to give an answer back. And that answer isn't always based upon absolute knowledge. It's usually scaled knowledge in relation to whoever else is in your class with you. So that means that the person who got the best grade in the class had the best command of the knowledge in their answer back to the professor. And then there's someone who received the lowest grade in class. If you're consistently seeing that you may be at the top of your class, it doesn't mean that you have absolute knowledge, but it just means that in that exposed setting, you were one of the students that gave the best answer back. But if you're consistently finding that you're a student that hasn't done that well, then it's your opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to critique my skill set, and now I need to put a plan together. Can I improve my skill set before I get to law school? Can I write more? Can I get some additional support? Can I get some additional resources and help so that when you get into law school, those are some of the barriers that are in front of you. And even if you've done well, we can always improve our writing. The best lawyers are those who can write well. The best lawyers are those who can communicate well. And the better that skill set is coming into law school, the easier law school is for you. And then you gain all those opportunities that we're trying to prepare for you in our Career Services Center, with our alumni, with the speakers that we have on our campuses. You'll be best prepared to take advantage of those opportunities.
Mr. Jefferson.
Yeah, I would just like to pick up on something that we've all been talking about in terms of writing, and to answer your question about like what not to do. Don't rush, right? Don't run through your application the last minute and then send it off. Because if you do that, invariably it's going to be filled with the kinds of things that we're telling you that we don't want to see. Another way of putting that, and I think everyone's talking about it, I want to highlight it, is writing is a process, right? So your first draft is not the draft. What I tell people all of the time is when you absolutely positively know you have the best personal statement that's ever been written, put it in a drawer for a week. Don't touch it, don't look at it, don't think about it. And if you come back in a week, I guarantee you, the sentence that was a little bit awkward, that didn't make sense, you'll know how to figure it out. You'll begin to see punctuation that may be missing or punctuation that shouldn't be there. Your mind has a habit of correcting things when you approach it over and over again, right? And when we approach these personal statements, we jump into them, we work them, and like, you'll be missing and, but your mind will actually add and, because you've been working so closely with it. So writing is a process, and you need to give yourself enough time. You don't want to rush it, right? You need to be thinking in terms of several drafts. And this actually will feed into your legal career as a lawyer, like I'm a lawyer, right? You would be astonished how many drafts you go through before you file a brief, how many people put their hands on any type of legal writing before it goes through, just in terms of adding this, picking up that. So it's not as if lawyers are always perfect. You always have people kind of going back and forth, but in this instance, you really do need to give yourself enough time on all of the parts that are qualitative that you're working on in terms of writing, so that you can get space from it, so that you can get an opportunity to work it over and over again. So this piece about writing every day, right? Think about your personal statement as, I'm going to work on it every day for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Like that will be better than kind of just trying to throw it together and then send it off to us, because we're going to see it. And it's going to show, it's going to be riddled with those kinds of things that kind of drive all of us a little bit nuts.
Thank you so much. So you all are getting nuggets, golden nuggets of information from these very experienced panelists. We're getting close to time, so I wanted to make sure that you all, as an audience, get the opportunity to ask these panelists what you want to hear specifically. So we're going to open this up to questions from the floor.
Because I'm lazy, I'm going to go here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jordan Jones. I'm a political science major at Smithson University. I just wanted to know, how much does the school you went to undergraduate matter when trying to apply for law school? How much do you all look at that?
That's a good question. It's a really good question, and I don't think I'd be fully honest if I didn't say that, if you went to a top school, of course, JK, Harvard, Yale, for instance, that we wouldn't be in somewhat in awe. However, if you went to a school that's a little lesser known, and you did well there, you're going to be just as competitive, I think, as anybody else. And so the school does matter to some extent, but everything else matters just as much. And if we get an applicant from Harvard, who has a really low GPA and really low LSAT score, and we're going to deny that applicant. So
I'll throw in an example. And I heard this on a panel a long time ago from a man by the name of Frank Motley, who was a longtime associate dean at Indiana University Law School, recently retired. And I was on a panel in Boston, actually, and Frank said the following to a group and the question, and again, think of being in Boston, you've got Harvard and Tufts and all these places. Young man asked if the quality of the school, the reputation of the school had anything to do with the admissions process. And Frank and I kind of looked at each other, trying to, okay, do you want to answer, I want to answer? Frank said the following, and it always stuck with me. He said, okay, let me ask you something. Is the average student that goes to Harvard, based on high school performance, better than the average student who goes to Fleabag State? And he said Fleabag State. And most people kind of went, you know, they didn't want to do anything, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, okay, it's Harvard. Believe me, take it from me, folks. The average student who goes to Harvard has done pretty well in his or her life, and they generally may have a better record overall than the average student who goes to Fleabag State, wherever that is. Then Frank said, okay, are all students who go to Harvard better than all students who go to Fleabag State? And that's when you can see people go like this. And that's exactly it. It's our jobs, to find those folks who go to whatever school you attend. And we're not going to make too many judgments on where you go to school, because it could be family reasons, could be athletic scholarships, could be community service, it could be you had to take care of other things while you, and that could be the only place you could go. But if you take full advantage of wherever you go, you'll be good. Because it's our job, and you've got probably close to 100, probably well over, close to 150 years of experience up here. We will find those nuggets, those diamonds in the rough, whether you go to Harvard or Fleabag State. And I'm not saying that the school you go to is Fleabag State, because frankly, I didn't understand what you said. So I don't know where you go to school, but it doesn't matter. Do the best you can at whatever it is you do, and you'll be all right. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paris Branch, and I'm from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. I'm a political science major, and I'm a senior. And I was wondering, is it important for interning before you go to law school?
Of course. And I say that, of course, because you're entering a profession where you'll be amazed at how few people actually know what lawyers do. Yet they're about to spend 6 figures in some cases to get in debt to educate themselves and dedicate themselves to the next 30, 40 years of their life to a profession where they've never once seen what a lawyer does. Now, I'm not saying that you have to, but I recommend it. And I recommend it just because even if you intern with a lawyer and it's not the type of law that you want to do, at least it's a perspective that gives you a chance to see something that you didn't have before. And knowledge is key. Knowledge is power. And the more that you get exposed to this profession before you join it, it may help steer you directly down the path you want to go down, or it may completely steer you away, and it will save you $100,000 in debt because you realize that the legal profession isn't for you. And if this is truly something that you want, then why wouldn't you want the opportunity to do an internship or an externship? Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to keep you out of law school if you don't. There are plenty of people that get into law school and they've never had the chance to do an internship or an externship. But that doesn't mean that you can't sit down and talk to a lawyer. It doesn't mean that you can't contact the bar association in your city and ask them questions, because the main thing that we want is for all of you to enter this profession. There's not enough lawyers that look like you. So we need you to make it. But what's going to help you make it is coming in with a true sense of what we do, coming in with your eyes open, and coming in with realistic expectations of the profession. And the only way you can do that is to ask questions and gain exposure. And internships are a wonderful opportunity to ask questions and gain exposure.
Hello, my name is Rochelle Vasquez. I am a senior English major, legal studies minor at Prairie View A&M University. And my question is, there's been a lot of talk about writing well. So in regards to the writing sample on the LSAT, do you guys read those, and how accurately are they weighed in the application process?
So, and again, I'm just going to speak for my school. Other schools may be a little bit different. We do on a limited basis, read the writing sample on the LSAT. The LSAT writing sample is what we know that you do on an impromptu basis. So if we see this glowing personal statement that is incredibly well written, and we're just like, I really wonder if this person wrote this, or what their impromptu writing may be like. We look at that. With that, we also understand that you were under time constraints. You probably, well, there's no way you could edit and revise it the same way in which you were able to edit and revise a personal statement. So the weight given to the writing sample on our part is somewhat minimal, but it's just another opportunity for us to kind of look and evaluate your application.
Same. I think I think the one thing that could help us sometimes when we're looking at an applicant, if there's somewhat of a, we're indecisive, we may go to use the writing sample just briefly, but it's basically the same way we would look at it in the process.
It'll vary from school to school. I've worked at 3 law schools, and in each committee that I've worked with, there's either been a legal writing instructor or a clinical faculty member on the admissions committee. And those are the 2 individuals, when I think of who the people are who read that writing sample and will chop it up, they usually fall in one of those 2 categories. So someone will look at it, but as has been stated before, we know that it's a 35-minute pain in the butt at the end of a 3.5-hour long exam. But as long as you can put a cogent paragraph or 2 together in response to the question, in that 35 minutes, you'll be okay. So yes, it is written or read, but it is not the most important thing to look at.
I just want to mention, just an example, I had a young lady who, I think she took the test, this was her 3rd time, and as we're making the decision on her 3rd time, she just started drawing cartoon characters in her writing sample. So I do want to let you know that we will pay close attention to it, because the young lady had, in her 3rd try on the LSAT, her credentials were strong, but I questioned her seriousness about the profession, so I did call her and ask her what was she doing. So definitely we will take a look at it. So don't draw cartoon characters.
I would add also, we don't want surprises. And I hate to say it that way because we want you to surprise us, but we can't fill our classrooms with risk. So we look for those consistent elements across your application. If you have a 4.0 and a 170 on the LSAT and you have a wonderful letter of recommendation, I could pretty much stop there because it should be consistent from that point. But if you have a 2.5 GPA, you have a 1 blah 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 LSAT score, 1 letter of recommendation is strong, personal statement has a lot of grammatical errors, that also tells me a consistency that I'm probably going to avoid.
Right.
So your job is to make sure that everything that we see is consistent. So if I read your personal statement and it echoes a well-written statement and you have a strong GPA, then I'm probably not going to read the writing sample. But if it's all over the place, then I have to look deeper, and that's where it starts to go, it can go 50-50 either way for the student. So the more consistent you are and showing strong consistency, the more likely you'll get the chance that you're looking for, which is to be in the law schools that you choose.
Hi, my name is Victoria Crosby. I am a senior political science major from Prairie View A&M University as well. There's been a lot of talk about the GPA and the LSAT component, and one of you did state that, if you have a higher GPA or higher LSAT score with a lower GPA, that you'll look at that. But what about for the opposite, with students who have high GPAs, but maybe that LSAT score is not where that is? How do you guys view those type of applicants?
I can say for the University of Michigan, we're going to look at the quantitative aspects, right? But this is the easiest way I can put it. Like, we have median scores in terms of GPA and LSAT, right? Every year we're going to take people, obviously, who are above on both medians. But every year we're going to take people who are above on one and below on the other, like literally. So there will be people who have great GPAs, lower LSATs, they'll get in, and vice versa. Every year at the University of Michigan, now, we're also going to take people who are below on both medians, right? Believe it or not. But that speaks to the qualitative aspect of it. And just to kind of round that off, like every year we're going to say no to people who are above on both medians. because they won't fit our environment, right? It gets into like what you're looking for. And I'll tell you a funny story. Oftentimes when you tell people no or above on medians, they will send you like a snarky note to let you know that they got into another school, which actually confirms like probably why we didn't like it.
Okay, we have a young lady here to my left who has a question. I'm going to ask, because we're running short on time, that I'm going to ask that one panelist answer this question, just so we can make sure that we get all the answers covered, the questions covered. So, go ahead.
Hello. I don't know if this is working. Hello, my name is Stephanie Alexander. I'm currently a senior political science major at Clark Atlanta University and a history minor. My question to one of the panelists would be, what did you guys take on applicants that pursue like master's or other graduate degrees before they apply to law school? Because I'm thinking about doing a year master's program in public policy.